Hi everyone, this is Todd Talks. I am joined by two absolutely amazing people, Patrick Rothfuss and one of my this is one
I
of
am
my
two
favorite people in the
people. I'm two
universe, Kate
amazing
Welch.
people.
Huh? Just two. Yeah. Patrick Rothfuss is like a transformer. He just kind of not a transformer. I'm sorry. Uh
I'm a
Voltron. You just
GoBot. Thank you
Voltron.
very much.
Yeah. You Voltron into Patrick Rothfuss. So most people have never seen the
Am
Rothfuss
I
part. And
am I the Patrick or the Rothfuss?
you are well, we
Um,
haven't even gotten to you. You're just hanging out and watching us talk. Yeah, it's weird. And also my friend Kate Welch.
Lucky me.
you're just a creeper. Weren't you aware
Yeah.
that was part of the Voltron mythology, where there was just somebody who watched and loved it?
Who just wrote fanfic about it. Like
His name was Jerry.
You're right.
He was always just like, "Wow, a lion."
Wow, look at these Voltrons go.
oh, I wonder if the leg lion that's yellow had a relationship with the blue lion that's an arm. If like, I wonder if we can ship that. I'm gonna write that up. It's gonna be great. Yeah, this show is already off the rails.
Already.
Yeah, This show is about Voltron. So everyone, we all got back from Unplugged. PAX Plugged. We all got back from PAX Unplugged, so we're probably a little bit jet lagged and a little punchy from all the traveling. So, how was everyone's experience with PAX Unplugged? That was my first, and that was amazing. Patrick?
Um, it was great. I was trying to think of how it felt. It felt different compared to last year, but last year was the first year, and I kind of just strolled in and wandered around and looked at stuff. Whereas this year, I was kind of on a mission because I was stumping for the charity, and I had, two performances and interviews, and it felt more crowded, but that I think is more of a reference to my schedule than the event itself. But still, it was a ton of cool people, and I got to see a bunch of my friends.
Yeah, you have
Well,
Worldbuilders. Oh, sorry. No, Kate, go ahead, please.
last year it was just like one big room. Even the main theater was just in that one basic room. But this year they upgraded to a bunch of different theaters, and there were two expo halls. There's one expo hall and then two giant like RPG tournament free play rooms. And like all of their satellite meeting rooms were converted into theaters. And I asked Ryan Hartman, who runs PAX, if it was bigger this year, PAX Unplugged, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like the attendance went way up, which is why they had to expand it." Still, I think my favorite PAX though.
It felt like the numbers were probably maybe not quite double, but it felt about twice as big. And certainly having all the different spaces were really nice.
That's really cool.
It was a remarkable experience because everyone. So you already have that social contract when you're playing D&D or any tabletop game, hopefully, and everyone was so nice, and there were so many people that were nice all together all the time. It was just like a polite fest. That was a great experience. So enough, like.
Do you think that that's a legitimate difference between, like, not to start shit between two different communities here, but like video game people versus like tabletop game people? Do you think that there is like the whole internet culture, I'm going to say what I feel, and hey, I'm kind of anonymous or at least safe on the internet, so I'm going to be a dick? Do you think that doesn't bleed into like board games and tabletop RPG nearly as much?
I personally agree.
Yeah, I've done and now I've been a video game developer and a tabletop game developer, and so I've been able to see the differences between these two communities. And I don't think it's that video game people are by like genetically a more toxic group, but what I do think is that so much video gaming is about isolation and competitiveness. And so much about RPGs and board games is about sitting at a table and not being anonymous, being with a group of people who you can actually see, and usually trying to cooperate. And so I think just by the nature of how your brain is structured to deal with those two kinds of game systems, you become a different kind of audience. That's my best guess.
No, I totally
I've
agree.
wanted...
I can tell you that I am a terrible person when I'm playing video games. I like if I'm playing a competitive game like Overwatch or anything like that. Like I play with my wife. We are, yeah. I mean, we're in competitive mode, right? Like we will.
Yeah,
We're a
of
little. We're
course.
probably a little bit snarkier. We're not like terrible people, but you know, you can't be snarky and mean around, you know, a gaming table. Or I mean, you can be,
Oh
but
no.
you're not coming back next week. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wondered. I've, you know, for a while, I kind of kept quiet about this because it seemed a little contrary to how people normally talked about or thought about role-playing games. Because, and again, I think I am a little bit older than both of y'all, and so it is a little bit hard for me to move entirely away from the way that D&D was perceived back when I started, back in '82. And it was like, at best you were worshiping the devil, and
yeah,
and at worst you were like a dangerous social maladjust who's just waiting to like go crazy and kill people in a shopping mall. And whereas, like, generally speaking, a ton of the people that I get along with really well either like played in the day, or they play now, or they wish they could play but they don't have a group of people to do it with. And I think, you know, I was thinking about it, like, why would this be different from like any other sort of communal social activity? Like, you know, and the truth is, while I love playing board games or I love doing tabletop role playing, it is sort of an excuse to get together with your friends, in the same way that, like, do you really get together to watch the movie? Well, sometimes, but mostly you're getting together with your friends. You know, are you really
Right.
there for poker? Yeah, but you're really there with your friends. And so any social activity is good socially, and it's probably healthy, and it's psychologically, you know, nutritious for people, and it's healthy for people. But I actually think, like, the difference between some of these other things and like a tabletop RPG is, even if you're not solving real world problems, or even if you're not directly like sitting down and talking about your feelings with a friend, you know, and doing some of that straight up real world friendshipping, I think, you know, playing a character and being somebody that you aren't normally, I think it's a sort of social exercise that your brain goes through, in the same way that, like, you know, at no point in your real life are you ever going to like use the same muscles that you use when you're like in the gym, or doing Taibo or whatever, but you still
yeah.
go do that thing and you get fit, because for a little while you're doing something really hard with your body. And you know, I think that's what an RPG can be. It's like, hey, pretend for a little while that you are an exiled alchemist with a club foot, and you're disinherited from your father, and also you're broke, and also there's a dragon, and you're like, okay, and can I get into this headspace? And it sort of stretches, and it makes parts of your psyche stronger, I think.
I think so
In a
too.
way, yeah. I see a convention being kind of similar. Like you are leaving your life behind and you are going to this con, and I don't. There's something very relaxing about that. Like you're like, okay, gaming is all I'm doing for the next 3 days. There's something very lovely about that, and yeah, I don't know. It feels like role playing just going to a con, because you're just so completely encapsulated by a genre of people and things that you love. So like you can't go anywhere and not run into someone you can't talk to about something and have like a shared history with to an extent. So that's what I like about that.
Yeah.
Miss Kate Welch,
What? Well, I think
thoughts?
to Pat's point, and I've said this before, I believe that humans are like all through our evolution and development as a species, storytelling has been really core to us. And it's obviously it's a good survival mechanism because the storytellers would be the ones who would teach their offspring things that they had seen, and those offspring would then be warned by those things and would learn from it, right? So to me, it makes perfect sense that telling stories is a huge part of who we are developmentally, biologically. And in modern day, at least in America, we don't have a method by which we're telling stories in most career paths, unless you happen to be someone who's creating stories for a living, which is pretty rare. People just don't have an outlet for it. And I think that when you're a kid, you pretend and you come up with these stories and you play, right? And there's something about the way that we raise children that at some point that becomes unacceptable, and a lot of people just lose it. And so Dungeons and Dragons ends up being this way that you can sort of be brave and step back into that imaginative play space of being a child, being unself-conscious about pretend and telling stories. And it's satisfying. There's some itch that it scratches that you on a very biological level. We're meant to do this. So I think that's a huge reason why it's popular, and a huge reason why people who play D&D are scientifically happier.
They've proven that with math.
Oh yeah. So lots
it's on
of
the
math.
cover now. You will be 40% happier.
Link to that article.
That's a great advertisement to put on every player's handbook. Like, this will make you 40% happier with your life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That checks out. You
also,
brought this
the
up to me.
pages are coated in a slight sheen of heroin, but yeah, it's unrelated.
And you will become deeply unhappy once you're done. Yeah. Just like, I really need another session. It's gonna be an itchy weekend. Yeah. Kate. Sorry, I'm just gonna get through the giggles. Kate actually brought something up to me once, and I didn't ever think about it, but it's so incredibly true that at 18, I had so many weird, crazy, insane life experiences, yet I still remember the D&D campaign better that I was playing at the time than, say, like running from a train, right? Or an explosion or a house fire. But I remember exactly where I was, like in that castle, casting a fireball.
Totally.
Is there something about when you have shared storytelling that's, I don't know why the mind like holds on to that memory so strongly? Is it because it's coming from you, because you're the one that's just kind of burning it into your own brain, do you think?
I think so.
My suspicion is, I mean, human beings are unique. If we are unique, which is a fair question to ask by itself. The way that our brains work are very different from other animals. And if people went hunting for that thing for a while, it's like, what sets us apart from the animals? And a lot of times those people who are trying to make these arguments had other agendas, like they were trying to prove that we were special or that God existed and therefore we were a proof of God's existence or something. But they kept looking for things that set us apart. And for a while it was like, we have language and nothing else does. And then that's just kind of blatantly untrue when you look at the animal kingdom. And they're like, we're the tool users and nothing else is. And that's just obviously untrue
also
as well.
Very
and
not
then it's
true.
like, very not true. And then they're like, okay, the other things use tools, but we're the only ones that make tools. It's like, also not true.
Also not true. Ravens make tools.
Yep. And, but all through this, I think the one thing that is different is our engagement with narrative, because creatures with language that we understand will communicate information, but they don't engage in counterfactual thought the same way that humans do. Counterfactual thought is when you look into the future and you feel hope or fear. And this is a dangerous kind of thought, honestly, because as soon as you experience hope, that's an expectation that can be destroyed, and it's really unhappy. And if you look forward into the future and you see fear, well, that causes an anxiety, that, whatever. Those can be productive, but also a lot of things that go wrong in people's lives are tied to counterfactual thought. But it's a really high order cognitive process. And if you take that and you combine it with something else that human brains have that nobody else does, we have there's something called mirror neurons, which like the other creature that has the most of them is like chimpanzees. And that accounts for what's referred to as monkey see, monkey do behavior, where one monkey, and I'm very aware that chimps aren't monkeys, so get off Twitter about it. But the you get one chimpanzee figures something out, and another chimpanzee sees him doing it and is like, oh, I can do that too. And they learn behavior that way, just by seeing it. And humans have that characteristic, that type of neuron in our head, except we have it exponentially more. We have 10 times more of those neurons in our brain. And if you combine that with the fact that we are really wired for really deep articulate language, and the fact that we engage in this counterfactual thought, it's possible that we are the only really advanced storytelling species. And even other creatures might tell stories, because even just saying, hey, food is here, if you're a bird, is kind of a story, right? But creating elaborate fictions might be something that only humans do. And creating these stories, and then they propagate through communities and through time, the way that we use and interact with language, it has a profound effect on the mind, and it has a profound effect on not just what you think, but how you can think. And I think that is, it's like Kate mentioned, it's a uniquely human behavior. If you think of what all of our entertainment consists of, all of the music and movies and TV, the books we read, all of our entertainment, 97% of it is tied to some sort of narrative and storytelling. It's very rare. Even football games are narratives, Right. And if you give people just a random assortment of things, they always try to find what connects them. And that is a sort of narrative that builds there too. We're so wired for it, we can't not see narrative in the world. And again, that can cause real problems if there's no narrative actually there. But yeah, I think the reason that we remember these stories so vividly is I think that's part of what makes people people. And then if you factor in the fact that reading novels is the only way scientifically to improve people's empathy, then I think it's arguable that empathy is the defining human characteristic, and that is exercised and it's learned and it's matured by our engagement with narrative. And yeah, I think it's not just that we like stories because we're people. It could be that we're only people because we engage in story.
I agree with. I think that's very interesting, especially when you look at anyone who makes film. And I made attempts at non-narrative films, and there's no easier way to make your audience completely angry than to give them a puzzle that cannot be solved. David Lynch is a big fan of this as well. He's made a few movies that no, there's no story. There isn't supposed to be a story. You're adding one desperately. Your mind is so hungry to make this make sense, but he specifically has made a few pieces, and There's some Japanese films as well, and plenty of movies from France that are designed in this exact way. And I've never seen audiences get more upset, especially Western audiences, to something that doesn't have a clear story, a clear narrative, something that is relatable. You almost want to throw it out the window with rage. So you're not going to make money that way.
Yeah, Burroughs was fighting that fight way back in the day. You know, he's like, can I write a novel with no setting, character, or plot in any traditional sense? But the big thing is either you succeed. It's arguable as to whether or not you can succeed, because he would make these stories and people are like, but here's a character, you know, like here is a progression of events, here is a plot. You know, like people make story out of Rorschach ink plots, you know.
Right.
We literally can't stop doing it. But you're right. If like when you get a broken narrative or narrative that doesn't function in the way that people expect, or sometimes you get a narrative with like an asynchronicity or that defies a trope, like Taming of the Shrew, you get half of a frame on it. Like they take this drunk guy and they make him king and they put a play on for him, and the Taming of the Shrew is the play. Right. And that means at the end of Taming of the Shrew, he should be there and he should be like, good play, everyone. But he's not there at the end of the play. It's a weird thing, right? It's a broken frame. And, you know, if I had nothing better to do with my life, I would do like a weird academic paper about like how Taming of the Shrew actually kind of sticks in people's heads better, because some part of us, even if we've consciously forgotten the beginning of the play being that, some part of us is still sort of being like, wait, there's something I need to resolve in this. And it keeps the story spinning up in your head.
Ooh.
That's okay, also why people still like
like that. No. Yeah, I'm a big fan of anything that's like, I love actually broken narratives, and I love anything abstract, which we're far afield from D&D suddenly. Like Michelangelo was amazing.
How to bring it back?
Wait, go ahead.
I think I can bring it back to D&D.
Do it. Bring it back home.
A broken narrative that spins in your head longer and stays with you because it isn't resolved might explain why D&D stories that happen to us in game are the ones that stick with us for so long. Not only did they happen to us and we were a part of their existence in the first place, but also so many home games, there's plenty of broken narrative. There's plenty of loose ends and characters whose plots didn't get resolved. And I wonder if that doesn't make you keep thinking about those stories that you never finished writing, you know? Maybe those are the ones that stick with you.
I think that's a really good. I think that's a really good point, because even like in books that I read, or like a lot of the webcomics that I used to read that had ongoing narratives, the ones that were always best were the ones that weren't tidy, because like really tidy stories come off as really fake. You know, where everything works out in a certain way in the end. Especially like the older you get and the more mature story consumer you are. And I mean that in terms of like eating, not buying, not consumerism.
Right.
So here's a question. What game or character that you played, game that you ran or character that you played that like didn't come to resolution, do you remember from your past? Let's test this theory. I like it. Can you remember one, Todd, like from back in the day? You're like, ooh, that's the adventure that never finished, or that's the character I really wish I could have played, but we never got a chance to see what that character could do. Do you have one of those that kind of floats on the top of your head?
I do, in a weird way. I have a personal obsession because of this. I had made a character I deeply liked, which is very hard because I don't know what's wrong with my brain. I just hate every character I make. I'm just like, it doesn't fit. And I made Avron, which is a character I'm literally playing now, and I've played with you, Patrick. And yeah, it was like one session, and it was 1 or 2 sessions, and I fell in love with this character. But of course, the game fell apart. We didn't get to play again, and so I created this narrative for that character that he was just kind of this planeswalker character who it was almost like a Doctor Who kind of thing. He just shows up in different worlds and plays, and sometimes he doesn't even remember his own past. He's so damaged from like traveling the D&D multiverse that it has adversely affected him in a very strange way. But yeah, like I remember every time every one of those sessions has ended, and so I just kind of built that into that character. This is a character who doesn't even remember where he began or ended, and isn't on some level aware that he's even in a game in sort of a fourth wall breaking Deadpool like narrative. Like we talked about this, like he remembers because he came from AD&D, so he remembers when, as we discussed, a hard rain would kill the entire village. like like when everyone had like 2 hit points, and Elf was a class. And so I liked building in that damaged character, because when I first played Avern, it was just me and my brother on a farm. There was no opportunity for me to keep playing because we're not near any population of people, and especially the closest town, we're like at the height of the Satanic Panic. So like it wasn't like we'd be like, hey, do you play D&D, and not like have pitchforks show up at our house and torches. So yeah, I definitely have. That's all my memories. I always want to play longer with every character. How about you, Kate?
Yeah, I remember I don't even know if it's better or worse, but the town that I was in, the D&D group, the one that I knew about, didn't let girls play. So I didn't have to worry about the Satanic Panic or anything. But I do remember playing Star Wars online RPGs, because you couldn't really get rejected for being a girl because no one knew that you were a girl. So
Right,
I remember I made dozens of Star Wars RPG characters and played them, starting when I was like 13. And I had this character, I put so much work into her, and she was a PhD holder. She was like an expert at every kind of science, and she had been conscripted into service on some smuggling ship, and so she was the science officer on the smuggling ship, and she was pissed off all the time. And I think she was just an outlet for my own rage. But I only ever got to play her once after spending hours and hours building this character, and I still think about her. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe I have unresolved anger around this character. But I can think of so many that I played for long, like years and years and years, who by design their stories never came to an end. But I remember thinking, I still think I know all of their names, and I know like what they looked like and their backstories, and I don't know, that kind of thing does stick with you.
Yeah, as you guys were talking, I kind of asked the question. I'm like, oh boy, can I follow through with one of my own?
Yeah.
And as you were talking, I was like, oh right, because I started with D&D, and then I went sort of like on walkabout through all the different systems of the 90s. There was this weird sort of silver age flourishing of RPG in the 90s. And it was just like a bunch of, and now we're having it again with a lot of these new systems. But back then you played like Teenagers from Outer Space, or there's a French game called Trauma, or we did Rifts or Palladium, or
West End Star Wars.
Right. Yeah, just all huge. these different ones. And I remember there was a really great, I don't think it was Rift. I hardly can remember the system, but I remember the character. And it was one of those cruel systems where you rolled randomly on all the tables. And so none of this like assign your 20 points and build the character that is your heart's desire. It's like, yeah, you make some choices and then, roll your background. Oh, you were an urchin. It's like you start pouring with psychological damage. It's like, roll again. Oh, also, like you're missing 3 of your fingers. It's like, that's rough, but go play your character. But I remember that character. It was an alien, like a hyper intelligent alien who would do advanced modeling physics in his head. And I got to play him once. And that game didn't get up off the ground. The person that was running it, we all didn't do it. But I will say the one that now kind of tickles at me more than anyone is Carrick. Because I came in and played Carrick with the Critical Role people. And I made that character. I thought, hey, it'd be fun to play a paladin of a different sort. I've never played a paladin before, but like a paladin who has like not given up his faith, but given up the adventuring life, and is hanging out in this town. And then he meets Critical Role, like they're these young kids who have come out, and they're like out there obviously trying to save the world, and he's just sort of taking care of this little town as best he can. And to see like him as this older, sort of wiser, some stuff happened to his old adventuring group and his life fell apart, and he's like, is it really worth it to run around like jackasses all the time trying to kill things and making the world better? Whereas if I stay here, this entire town will always have clean water and healthy food to eat. And that was Carrick. And he worked so well with Critical Role. And then so much so that he was still in my head, and I wrote that letter that I sent to Marisha, because Marisha and Carrick had a really great character moment, because she was having a big crisis of faith and everyone was giving her pep talks and she was just a mess. She's like, we shouldn't be doing this. It's like, why are we deciding who lives and dies? And she was a huge mess in that campaign. And everyone was trying to talk her up and reassure her. And she met Carrick, and Carrick is like, so it's real bad, isn't it? like this, it's like, it sucks a lot, doesn't it? And it's bad when you lose, and it's worse when you win. Right. And it was this beautiful little moment. And I kept thinking about it so much that he then sent her a letter, and they read it on the stream. And then Carrick came back, because it was a literal, like the entire world they were living in was being consumed by this conflict. And so in that case, yes, Carrick like dusts off his old gear and gets out there to make the world a better place. So I came in and I played like 3 or 4 sessions towards the end of that arc when they were really mopping things up. And so Carrick like kept being around, and then he guested in with the Waffle Crew once. And after that game in the Waffle Crew, he managed to pull everyone else. Like Strix almost got pulled into Sigil, and he went in and saved her. And then he's like, and he keeps asking a couple of questions, because something happened that screwed him up real bad, and nobody knows what it is except for me. But he's really looking for some answers, and he doesn't know where to find them. And so right now he's in Sigil. And I view him as being this sort of like, he's kind of going around doing what he can when he meets people that needs help. But I kind of wonder, will Carrick ever find what he's looking for? Because I can write that story in my head, but it's not real unless it happens at a table with somebody,
Yeah. Yeah, you need that confirmation. You need people to be amongst you to make it real for you. Because you want this thing. Yeah, you have this kind of like this desire for this character. But you're right. Like, it's just pretend if it's just you by yourself, but it's real if it's with your friends.
Yeah.
That did remind me of one other character that drove me nuts in 2 ways that I never got to finish, and that was we were playing Cyberpunk, and I asked the game master if I could be the villain, and that was so hard because no one knew it was a Kaiser Sose usual suspects kind of thing.
Wow.
And so I was literally funding the group on all their exploits. So if they needed more gear, or I needed to clean up something they had done as murder hobos, It was me that had to arrange it, and I only had so much money. And so I got into this very strange place as a character of like, this is just management.
Right.
Like, I am a horrible, evil person, but like, I'm watching my bank account go down, and I've got to make decisions to get that bank account up just so I can fund these adventurers who think they're heroes in the cyberpunk universe. So I can keep them up and running. And it definitely kind of like, it was very kind of deconstructionist, the typical hero's adventure kind of thing, because I am the villain, but man, I'm a villain for a reason, because like money's running out, guys. And no one found out. We never finished the game, so no one found out. Yeah. Oh, so no one, like after several sessions, no one knew it was me that whole time, which I'm so glad that you and I got to wrap up a plot line like that as well. That's what I love about characters, is like you can figure out things that you never would have figured out before, like or have moments that are just preposterous. Like Avram was evil. He was an assassin at one point. He went to Bitopia because he decided he wanted to be good, and that's a plane of existence. If you spend too much time there, it will shift your alignment.
Wow.
So is he actually good, or is he just an evil person that just basically had surgery in his mind to become a good person? So like, what is identity at that point?
When you said Bitopia, I assumed that was sort of one of the heavens where you go and you just get to make out with whoever you want all the time.
I know, right? That's the assumption with Bitopia, but yeah, that's not how it functions.
The brochure was very misleading.
Yeah, that might be how he ended up there. He like big false advertising, guys. I mean, the Beastlands are the Beastlands. I know I'm going to become a beast. Like, yeah. Is there anything that you've explored that you never thought you could explore, like just mentally with a character? Which we've kind of covered this already a little bit, but for you, Kate, where you're just like, have you ever had an epiphany because of a character you've been playing?
Yeah, I talk about this quite a bit because I think that RPGs, for me at least, and for several others that I know, are an identity exploration exercise a lot of the time. And certainly I try, I think intentionally now, when I'm playing a character in a serious campaign, I want to use it as this is free therapy for some thing about myself that I need to work on, or that I want to work on, or that I want to figure out how I feel about. And so, for instance, Rosie is Rosie's a lot of things, but the two big ones are that she's super old, and women, as we grow old and visibly age, we're discarded by society. And that's something that's really scary. And so for me, I wanted to create and explore a woman who was super old and was not letting that get in her way. And so that's a big deal for me. But when I was a kid, I was a horse girl, straight A student, like no cool clothes kind of kid, no friends. And so I remember when I started doing Star Wars role-playing, I wanted to create the opposite of myself. And so I created this like super bombshell dancer in a cantina kind of deal. Everybody else was making cool Force users, and I was like, no, I just want to be a hot girl. And so I ended up making this very beautiful character she became very popular, the kind of like the person who was always at the cantina, and people would come and confide in her, and she was always witty and cool, and I was like, this is awesome. I like this persona. And so I think that for me, I spent the next 5 years of my life playing this character, and kind of just practicing what it would be like to be like a cool girl, like, and to be somebody who was popular and that people liked. And so it didn't go great, and I ended up the way I am.
I would argue you just became no. It seems like you faked it till you made it. Now you're like a very sociable, very charming, very popular personality in the D&D community.
Thanks.
So you're saying,
I'm not trying to like compliment you. This is all we have stats.
I read an article about a kid. It's proven scientifically. But Is this why when we first met, you're like, hey, meet me at this specific address, and it was a cantina, and you were wearing all that body paint? This suddenly makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
it makes a
The body
lot of
paint
sense.
is normal. I wear that to the grocery store.
Oh, okay.
It was like, it ended up being a thing where she was sexy, but that was not for me. That was like the armor that got me through to even being allowed to have a conversation. And so and at that time in my life, that's what I needed. I needed to be like, how can I have a conversation with someone, like just past this attractiveness gate of this imaginary person, and then actually develop a personality that I was too shy and afraid and socially unaware to be able to do on my own. So it's complicated and it's a lot, but it helped me.
Well, no, and I think for me, like as a kid, I always was going to play the wizard. I mean, wizard all the time, wizard all the way, because, and here's a little window into my childhood and into how my brain works. I think I might have been like 8 or 9, probably not 10. I remember going to my mom and saying, "Mom, when will I be wise?" Um, and she did real well, given like the fucking out of the blue nature of that, that question coming from your little kid, where, and because here's the thing, two things. One, I was reading The Lord of the Rings, and you have two distinct classes of character in that book. You have those who are among the wise and those who aren't, and like the people who are, it's Galadriel, Elrond, most of the wizards, although we only see one who is emblematic of that, Faramir, who's rare because he is of a new generation, but also among the wise, right. Aragorn. They are among the wise, and the terrible ones are those who were wise and have fallen, like Saruman and the Lord of Gondor. And then it's arguable for Frodo and Sam and Legolas and Gimli. They're like sort of wise by association, but it's not clear if they're really of the wise. And then there's kind of like everybody else. But then you have like your Boromirs and the people who are not. And I knew that I wanted to be wise, but I didn't really know what it was entirely. And my mom just said, when you're older, which is a fair question. Yeah, it's a fair answer to a weird question.
Yeah.
But I also knew that like if you're a wizard, then you're powerful and you can do these spells and that's cool. And it's not as simple as saying like, ooh, I wanted to be powerful, or oh, I wanted to be wise, or ooh, this seemed cool. It's a little bit of all of those. But I always used to play almost exclusively wizards. And as I play these days, if I just get my druthers, Viari is the very first rogue that I ever played. And he was fun to play as a ass kicker and a swashbuckler, devil may care, whatever. But, it's not a coincidence that he is pretty and he is a charmer, because, if I am going to spend some time having a vacation from my life and play somebody else, it's like I would love if I were someone pretty who felt comfortable going up to people and saying, hey, who wants to make out? Anyone? Make out, you, right? Okay, sure. There we go. Like that seems like it would be a cool thing. Talk about a strange fantasy world, right? But that's the thing that is sort of a fun idea for me that I don't have in my ordinary life. But it's the same with Carrick. Carrick is just a different thing that I think it would be fun to play with. Sort of a trusting person who comes in and wants to fix things and can help and can fix things, and then he leaves. He's almost like a tone poem, because that is actually fairly close to my real life. except that Carrick gets to move on, you know, and I never get to move on. I see something that needs fixing, and then I do it, and then I inevitably make a job out of it, and I trap myself. So the fantasy part of Carrick is that he never gets what he wants, and then he goes to a different city or plane of existence. Yeah.
The darkest part of that would be him going home and finding, you know, a very Lord of the Rings ending to the Shire kind of thing, where he has been gone.
Yeah.
And seeing what that has done. That would be like the nightmare of that situation. I think I think what D&D and games allow you to, like, we get attached to these characters, like, especially when you're younger. Like, I didn't feel like I succeeded at anything, and getting to play a game where I could succeed was pretty cool. So like that, you know, like, well, especially like any scenario that like I felt like I had a shot. Especially like growing up poor, like really poor and not always the best neighborhood, to have some kind of control over your life, and to also be able to save your friends against, you know, these fictional monsters and fictional situations, and to actually have money or to be able to stop a monster from killing somebody, that that hooked me right away. The idea that this, it's kind of like it allowed you to see a better world than potentially what you were having. And like I had a really good life, in terms of like my family life was great. I had a great family, but life around that was always not fantastic for my friends. And I think like that when I first started playing D&D, that like helped with that. Like it gave me the concept of things can get better, which I always try to remind teenagers or anyone who has depression or anxiety is it can get better, especially if you're in high school. Trust me, get through it. Imagine something greater. Like, it's not fantasy. Like, it can get so much better than what you have now.
Yeah, I will say that. Like, second, anybody out there who is in high school, oof, part of me wants to be old man Rothfuss in here and say like, oh, you don't know, your kids don't know how good you have it. You get to play D&D and you don't get beat up for it. But I also know that like when I went to high school, there weren't metal detectors, you know? So I'm like,
right, yeah,
maybe old man Rothfuss had it better than he thinks. I also think like it just because I can't make it through a single hour without telling a cute kid story. My youngest, when he was 2 and 3, he would talk about it, and he would say, Dad, you are very strong, you know? And again, to a 2-year-old, I am literally the strongest thing in the world. I am the biggest thing in the world. It's one of the perks of being a dad is like your child will write your fanfic for you.
Oh wow,
you know,
totally right.
And he's like, Dad, you are so big. You are the strongest thing. And he goes, and he would say, like, if there was a giant, you are stronger than a giant. And I would be like, well, you know, I am pretty strong, yeah. And you know, and I can pick him up and throw him into the air. And I mean, like, that's no offense, that's pretty strong. I am pretty great here. But then he would say, if there was a monster and it came to our house, you would protect us. And I'm like, absolutely I would, you know? And he's like, right, okay, good. I knew it because you're big. You're the biggest and you're the strongest. And then he'd say, if bad men came to the house, you would, you would take care of them. And I'm like, oh yes, I would take care of them. He's like, right, good. And so what he was doing is he had a concern, and then he built a story around it. And the story that he built around it protected him from the fear. And I gave him a way outside that little trap he was building for himself, which is you can only be safe if you're strongest. And I remember I was pushing the stroller back from the park, and I said, and he goes, and he started to do it again. He was almost repeat it like a litany. He goes, Dad, you are very strong. You are the strongest. You are the biggest. And as much as I did love hearing that, and because if he puts all of his apples in that cart, eventually he will see somebody who is bigger than me, or he'll learn that there are people stronger than me. And if he has all of everything weighing on that might be really disillusioning to him. And so I said, well, I am. And I said, but do you know, there are people who are bigger than me. There are people who are stronger than me. And there are people who are taller than me. And I go, but do you know what I really am? Is I am clever. I am very clever. I might be the cleverest person who you ever meet. And I go, it's better to be clever than to be strong. And do you know why? And he goes, why? And then I tell him a series of stories, and I steal liberally from all the folk and fairy tale. There's the story of like every jack in the world who goes to beat every orphan boy, where it's like, he's like, he has the contest against the giant, and the giant is like, show me how far you can throw a stone. And he picks up a stone and he throws it for a mile. And then I'm like, but then what I would do is I would go out onto our porch, and do you know where the dove lives, in the nest? I go, I would never do this if it wasn't to save our family, but I take the dove and I pretend it's a rock, and then I throw the dove, and the dove would fly and fly and never hit the ground. So it looked like I was stronger. And I would tell him these stories about how being clever beats being strong. And after that one day, he changed his tune, and he would say, I heard him talking to his brother and saying, Daddy is very clever. And if there were bad men that came, he would protect us because he is very clever. And so it was nice to give him like a way around that, like not the desire for strength or bigness, to know that if you are clever, you can save people too.
Okay, I can't follow that up. I'm gonna cry. So but you're right.
Yeah,
that's.
How about
fantastic.
This? I'll follow up this cute kid story. Do you mind if I pitch the charity?
Please do.
Yeah,
because number one,
you may as well.
Yeah, it's probably a good time to do that. You and I are playing in a game Thursday for Worldbuilders.
Oh, yes. Yep.
We've got a fantastic cast. We've got Amy Vorpal. She's going to be dungeon mastering us in a holiday-themed type adventure. We have TK Johnson. We have myself. Hopefully I'm not terrible. And we have Havana. I almost want to say Havana Bana. She recently has joined the cast as well. And part of that is to raise money for Worldbuilders. Can you tell us what Worldbuilders is?
The big thing I'm trying to do these days, I run a charity called Worldbuilders. And in terms of charities, I'm not going to say it's the best charity out there, but I am the biggest person you'll ever see, according to my child. And I'm very clever. And so I would not pick a bad charity to support with my efforts. Worldbuilders is a charity that rallies the geek community, so that because if you're a geek, odds are you're really smart, and you know that a lot of charities out there are awful, or they're inefficient, or they're scams, or they're thinly disguised missionary work where they make people pray for whatever aid you're going to give them. And the charity that we are backing, and we have backed for years, is none of those things. It's called Heifer International, and they work towards food sustainability. They don't help people out by just giving them food. They give them the tools, education, and supplies so that they can improve their own lives forever. And frequently that is something like livestock. Like they will teach people how to take care of a goat and build a pen for a goat and milk a goat, and then they'll give them a goat, and then that family has access to better food, and they sell the extra milk, and the goat has babies, more goats, more babies, more milk, more money. And it's like a small business, except you also can eat it, which in a developing country is about the best thing ever. Sometimes they do chickens, sometimes they do cows, sometimes it's not livestock and it's honeybees that will, like, as much as double the crop yield of your garden plot or your little farm. Sometimes people go to Heifer and say, hey, we hear you give out chickens. And Heifer's like, we've looked into the ecology of the area. What you really need is trees, because you have soil erosion, and that's why your farm is doing really bad. And these fruit trees will give you a cash crop and diversify, like, your food diet, and you can sell them, and it prevents soil erosion, and there's shade. Again, Heifer is so good at this. They've been doing it for 70 years, and they are an excellent feet on the ground, do it charity. Worldbuilders, our charity, why would you give to us if you could just go to give money to Heifer International? Well, you could, but if you come to us and donate during our fundraiser, we have like $170,000 worth of books and games, comics, a cabin for two on the Joko cruise. We're giving away a beautiful black walnut hardwood gaming table by Wormwood Games, like a $10,000 gaming table that they will deliver and assemble at your house. For every $10 you give us, you get a chance to win these things and many, many more. And all of the money, 100% of it, goes to Heifer International. So you can make the world a better place sustainably forever, feed hungry kids, and more than just feeding hungry kids, like giving them the chance to help themselves, because the money that a family gets from selling eggs or milk or surplus crops, what they get then is the opportunity to then take care of themselves, and they can pay for school, they can buy medicine, they can buy clothes, they can buy tin for the roofs of their homes. It lets them be in control of their own lives for the first time ever. And on top of that, you get to come win a bunch of cool stuff. And I mean, winning cool geekery is great. So one of the things we're doing that I've shown off lately is we're giving like one-off buffs in terms of little tickets that we are printing up. This is an acquisitions one. This is for Viari. If you have this, if you win this by donating on the D&D team page for Worldbuilders, you are owed one dramatic rescue from Viari. Kate has one from Rosie Beestinger that means you may call upon the Beestinger clan one time. Do so warily. But we're having these cards. We just got these back from the printers. Here's Grogs from Critical Role. You can have one use of Barbarian Rage, whether or not you are a barbarian. There's some of the D&D team. Chris Perkins has one. Mike Merles has one. Jeremy, Nathan, they're all making cards. And Chris Perkins is great. You get to call on the Green Flame. I think Mike Merles lets you as a player become DM for 1 minute. And your DM has to accept these cards, right? Because these people run Dungeons and Dragons. You know, it's like they are painted into a corner here. They can't say, oh, that's not canon. It's from Chris Perkins. You have to allow this at the table, right?
Yeah.
So if you come and you donate on the D&D team page, you have the ability to win. We're giving away hundreds of these cards, including whole sets. We've got them from Acquisitions Incorporated, Critical Role, The Adventure Zone, Sirens of the Realm, parts of the Waffle Crew, just kind of everyone I could think to ask. please come in, win this cool stuff, and help us make the world a better place. We're closing in on $600,000 now, and the fundraiser is over on the 11th. By the time we get to the 11th, I want to hit $1 million. So come on in, help me make that happen.
Yeah, you don't have to just pretend the world's going to be a better place. You can make it happen.
You can for real do it. And you'll also feel real nice inside. Trust me on that one.
Okay, thank you, Patrick Rothfuss, so much. That sounds like an absolutely amazing charity. I'm looking forward to helping with that as much as possible. Kate Welch, thank you for being an amazing Dungeon Master. She DM'd her very first live game at PAX Unplugged and had me crying, had me terrified, turned me an entire wolf pack, and supremely boosted my confidence to a new level that is potentially dangerous. All within 1 hour. Kate needs to be DMing every single week somehow. That just needs to happen. So,
Todd, you just described every conversation I've ever had with Kate. I laughed, I cry, I'm attacked by a pack of wolves.
Yeah. Oh, every time. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I believe that is our show. And what is the best place to find the Worldbuilders charity?
If you click, you can just Google up Worldbuilders. There's also just go to worldbuilders.org. We are auctioning off items. You can donate, but do check out the team pages because you're always going to be eligible for the main prize draws. But on the team pages, you'll have the chance to win all of those prizes and some specialty ones as well. The D&D team page is where you can win all of these cards.
All right. Thank you guys so much for being on my show. I adore and love both of you so much, and it was great to get together and talk. Thank you, everyone, for watching. That's the end of the show. Have a great day.
Thanks.